Greetings all. So I thought I'd start this book by first of all talking about the structure of this book. That's very important for me so that you better understand where we're going with this book. So let's start off. Well, first of all, there's this notion in this book whether there's this principle that stands alone as a separate principle or if it's part of a principle. If I feel it's not, like, it kind of arises from the other principle or it's not as important, I just include it as a sub principle or perhaps a corollary. But if I feel that it's very important that it stand alone, I include it as its own principle. So that's basically it. And another thing I want to talk about is general concepts. Now, there are these principles that apply to the opening, middle game, and end game, or middle game, end game, opening, middle game, opening, end game, whatever. So they apply to a lot of phases in the game. So I include them under general concepts. So they're general concepts. Different from meta principles, which are like the overarching principle that lies behind most of the principles in this book. Meta principles is something else. That's what it is. And another very important note is that I want you to be conversant in the language of chess. So I want you to know these terms and I want you to know how to differentiate principles, how to combine them, even though that's, of course, a task that's well beyond this book or any book, maybe for that matter. But I want to like implant these seeds of knowledge of how to combine these principles, how to make use of them, how you'll be able to succeed with using these principles. So that is one of my aims, at least in this book, and maybe the biggest aim. So I give a nice example here. If someone tells you the bishop is stronger than the knight, that's obviously not always the case. So you tell them bishops and knights have the same average value, but their instantaneous values greatly differ. So that's true that the bishop is usually stronger than the knight, but sometimes in closed positions, for example, the knight would be stronger. So you have to know these nuances, and I try to explain this very well, especially by using certain examples, so that you don't get the wrong idea. So you get the right idea, you don't get the wrong idea, so that you are better able to combine these principles to know when to use them. And yeah, that's basically it. Okay, so let's move on, if I can here, to the fourth note. Let me maybe make it like this. Yeah, this is better. So I've aimed to be as comprehensive as possible. That's a very important thing about this book. And of course, I mentioned the gaps and limitations. So there are many principles that I did not quite think they are actually principles. So I give this example, it's a very famous one. A bad plan is better than no plan at all. I don't really believe this is the case. I don't want my readers or viewers to see that, oh yeah, a bad plan is better than no plan at all, so they start making bad plans. No, this isn't, I think, a very useful chess tip. I personally have never used it in my games. I've never thought, oh yeah, let's go with a bad plan better than no plan. I think it uses too much exaggeration. And of course, some other people might disagree with me, so um, that's up to them. That's one limitation, that perhaps my the way I see things is not so correct, and I needed to include, for example, this principle. And another thing is about the grading system. The grading system is no perfect science, and I specifically not intended to be, because I don't want to get bogged down working on like statistical things. And you're only as strong as your weakest link. You're only as strong as the model you're using in science. So I don't want to use a model and spend so much time on creating this theoretical model when I have the ability to know which principles, because I'm a reasonably good chess player, so I know when the principles apply, when they don't. Um, and that's why this grading system, like how often they apply as well. I can use my experience of tens of thousands of games to be able to know when the principle applies, when it doesn't, how important is one principle over the other. So the grading system is rather subjective and not objective, which is, I think, more of a strength than a shortcoming, but of course it could be a shortcoming. So that's why I'm explaining this. And yeah, so for example, I give here, like, no one will say that you should, like, weak squares are permanently weak is a more important principle um, than, which one do I give here? Develop all your pieces, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I don't want people to. I don't think person will reasonably think any reasonable person will think that. So if there's a 1 2 point difference, like if I tell you a knight on the rim is the I love to use that example. If I tell you that principle is like 4 out of 10 in terms of importance, you're going to say, yeah, okay, that makes sense, but I would like it to be maybe 6 out of 10. Okay, 2 point difference is not such a big deal. But if my system will fail, my grading system will fail if you think that, if or my grading system shows that, for example, develop all your pieces is less important than a knight on the rim is them. Of course, it's not. I mean, develop all your pieces, that's an overarching opening principle. A knight on the rim is them. There are many exceptions to this principle, and um, it's not such an important principle because the game isn't just about knights, but it is about the development of all forces. So clearly, that's the case. So this is what could be one limitation. So if you feel perhaps I missed something and my grading system, for example, puts a very important principle a bit under the less important principle, that could be a very big shortcoming. And most important, I think, principles on chess improvement. Now, I've seen books on chess principles do this, but I feel it's a rather separate subject. Principles on chess improvement belong more so in coaching books and stuff like that, which I would like to tell you I am also working on. But yeah, so it's not like something that's so necessary to include in chess principles books, so I did not include them. And yeah, that's it for these notes. So I hope you get a better grasp of the direction this book is heading at and specific nuances about this book. So with that, I hope you got something out of this, guys, and take care.